Today we're going to perform a complete electronic rack and pinion replacement on this 2014 Ford F-150. The replacement process is very similar to conventional hydraulic rack and pinions. However, there are some additional steps required. This electronic rack and pinion does require us to perform what's called a PMI, which is also known as a programmable module installation, which means we're going to pull the original power steering control module configuring information from the original rack and pinion before we remove it. Then upload this data to the replacement rack and pinion after installation is complete. PMI is a process where we use a J2534 flash tool like this one that we have sitting over here to extract the data from the original rack and pinion module, and then we're going to transfer it to the replacement rack and pinion module. Sometimes a PMI cannot be performed due to the original module not being able to communicate due to it being damaged or for other reasons as well. In this case, using as-built data will get you going. One note before we continue with the install. Many vehicles now use hardware which is called torque to yield. You might see it as TTY. These type of bolts cannot and must not be reused. They are meant to be tightened only once. The two mounting bolts for the rack and pinion, the outer tie rod nuts, and the steering shaft to rack input shaft bolt are to be discarded and replaced with new. Now, before we remove the electronic power steering gear, we want to hook up our J2534 module programming pass-through tool and the laptop to the data link connector onto the dash. Using Ford's IDS, we wanted to go into PMI and upload the module configuration information from the power steering control module. Next, it is important to remove the negative battery cable. Failure to do so can result in damage to the internal power relay of the replacement unit. Position the vehicle on a lift. Then, using a steering wheel lock as such, center and lock the steering wheel in place. Now remember, do not allow the steering wheel to turn or damage to the clock spring can occur. If there is evidence that the steering wheel has been rotated, you will need to remove and recenter the clock spring. Now let's remove the front wheels and tires, then remove the skid plate if equipped. So loosen the outer tie rod jam nuts, and then go ahead and take off the nuts securing the tie rods to the knuckle and discard those. We won't be needing those. Now you can unscrew each outer tie rod and jam nut so they can be replaced on the replacement unit that we show right here. Remove and discard the steering column shaft to steering gear bolt and disconnect the steering shaft from the rack and pinion. Disconnect the two steering gear electrical connectors and the 4 wiring harness retainers. Position the wiring harness aside. Remove and discard the 2 steering gear to cross-member bolts. Now the rack and pinion can be removed. Position the replacement rack and pinion in place and using new mounting bolts, torque these to 325 foot-pounds. Position the steering shaft onto the rack and pinion and securing it using a new bolt, which you'll torque to 22 foot-pounds. Thread each outer tie rod, jam nut, and outer tie rod onto the replacement rack, keeping in mind that a final adjustment will be made during the front wheel alignment procedure after install. Replace the skid plate and bolts if equipped, install your front wheels and tires, and now you can lower the vehicle and remove the steering wheel lock. Now, using your J2534 device, you now need to finish the PMI, which again was that programmable module installation, to get the configuration info from the original unit uploaded into our replacement unit. We will go back into IDS and load the saved information into the power steering control module. After we have confirmation that the upload was successful, we can check and verify no DTCs exist and disconnect the laptop from the DLC. Now that we've got all of our configuration uploaded into our rack and pinion, our tires are on, we can go ahead and perform our front end alignment to ensure that the toe is centered on this vehicle. Now that we've completed the alignment, there's just a couple other things that we need to do. First, go ahead and take your steering wheel and turn it lock to verify a smooth operation of that rack and pinion, making sure there's no abnormal noises and that no lights do illuminate on the dash. Then let's go for a test drive. Let's make sure that we do get above 45 miles an hour and that everything feels as the way it should. And with that, the electronic power steering rack installation and programming procedure is complete, and this F-150 is ready to roll. Be sure to subscribe to Cardone's YouTube channel so you don't miss a tech update. Thanks for watching.